So I just did a class with the other group, and the point of the class was, I'm talking about Yitzhak Kislev. Yitzhak Kislev is the Shana Chassidus, is the head of the year for Chassidus. So I made a statement, which I believe is true. I never saw it in a maimer, I never saw it in a sikha, in my own words, but they're not my own thoughts. I think that the statement that I'm about to make is a valid and credible and true statement, and it's something that you have to really think about seriously. What did Chassidus change? Right? Can you say in 20 words or less what Chassidus changed over pre-Chassidus that makes Chassidus so novel, so different, so new, so original that it has its own Rosh Hashanah, right? The Mishnah says we have 4 Rosh Hashanahs, and the Rebbe Rashab says we have 5 Rosh Hashanahs. What is it about Chassidus that makes it so unique, so distinctive, so special, so different that it's a whole new Torah? And this is my statement. Until Chassidus, the most important thing in Yiddishkeit was Torah mitzvahs. And you were Jewish because you learned Torah and you did mitzvahs. After Chassidus, the most important thing is the Jew. And you learn Torah and do mitzvahs because you're Jewish. The center of gravity, this is a very great pun. There's probably a better word for it than that, right? What does the word gravity mean? What does gravity mean? Pulling down, right? But the gravity has another translation in English also. Does anybody know what the second translation of gravity is? Very good. Something which is very serious is grave. So the center of gravity, tarta mashma, right? The heaviness of Chassidus and the seriousness of Chassidus is that above all, machshavta quote the medrash, machshavtan shel Yisrael kadma l'chol davar, afil machshavas hateirim. When the Eibishter thought about the world and its purpose, the first thought on the Eibishter's mind was a Yid, because a Jew comes before Judaism. Until Chassidus, Judaism was before it. You were Jewish because you practiced Torah mitzvahs. After Chassidus, you practice Torah mitzvahs because you're Jewish. And the Ikid is a Yid. It's a real Chiddush. It's a real Chiddush. It's a real change of thinking. And in our lives, this thinking affects how we live. Our entire the way we live our lives reflects this Yossi, this foundation. And the most precious thing in the world is a Yid. A Yid is more precious than Torah mitzvahs. And this is a Lashon HaMedrash. These Hebrew words. Machshavtan she'yisol kodma l'chol dover afil machshavas hatera, the thought of the Jew come before everything, even before the thought of Torah, is a medrash, which I spoke at length to the girls in the previous group. So I want to continue that Farbrengen with you. And this is another simple and obvious and logical truth, right? You don't have to be fried to have a Paltiel Yid. You know what I'm saying? When you think about a Paltiel Yid, who was the Paltiel Yid? Yene, the guy who's Rahman al-Islam looks so not Yiddish. And it seems like he has nothing in common with you. Or the girl whose behavior and whose philosophy is not the Yiddish at all. And you can't imagine she being interested in what you have to tell her. And then you sit down and you talk to her, you meet her on the street and you talk to him. And you find out, number one, that he's Jewish. Number two, being Jewish matters to him. Number three, he's so touched and flattered and excited and moved by the very fact that you talk to him. That sometimes a person who you can't imagine having anything in common with, it turns out you have an enormous amount in common with, and there's a bond, there's a connection, there's an atzmiyistic connection, right? This is what we know. This is our generation. This is Deir HaShvi, right? We call it shlichus, but it's not shlichus. It's Lubavitch. If you're a Lubavitcher, this is your mindset, right? If you are a Baal Tshuva, or children of Baal Tshuva, graduate Tshuva, and you have non-religious cousins, right? And I'm not a Baal Tshuva, my parents are not Baal Tshuva, but I have non-religious cousins. A lot of them, unfortunately, because my family's been in America for way over 100 years. So my mother's family did not suffer from the Holocaust. They suffered from the American Holocaust. My mother has many, many cousins who are not from, many of them married to Goyim. If we were Bobov, right, we were Litvish, this is, what can you do? If you're Lubavitch, you get under their skin, you bother them, you send them a book, you try to put film on with them, you try to read and say, and you say, why should they be interested? I'm the weirdo, right? I'm the Nebuch. I'm stuck in the past. They're American, they're modern, they're with it. Why would they be interested in what I have to say? And then when you do it, you see, pum fakert, they have less self-esteem than we do. As bad as our self-esteem is, their self-esteem is worse. They're so hard and they're so touched that you consider them worthy enough that you should share with them something. And relatives are tricky business. You know that. Relatives are tricky business. Much easier to kind of a stranger than relatives. But very often, come in on it and come in on top, and you can touch and you can move and you can uplift a person. Right? But here's the chap. You don't have to be fried to have a pintel yid. You don't have to be going off the derech to have a pintel yid. In other words, the pintel yid is not only there for crisis. The Baal Shem Tov's invention was not just for the Yidden who have spun out, you know. Or to say it in different words, okay? I'll give it to you in fancy. I just made it into a noun. You all know about the Rebbe's kuntris in Yana Shalteres Achsidis, right? Right. Yeah. Right. If you don't know, please say yes anyway. Okay. In English, it's called "On the Essence of Chassidus." In Yana Shalteres Achsidis, the Rebbe spoke a sicha, then he edited that sicha. The sicha has been published. It's been translated, which is an insight. It's a window. It's a commentary on what Chassidus is. In Yana Shalteres Achsidis. For those of you who know the kuntris, and for those of you who don't know the kuntris, the magic word of kuntis and Yana Shalteres Achsidis is Yechida, right? That's the code. The word that the Rebbe uses in that kuntis throughout is Yechida. But the kuntis starts with chapter 1. Does anybody remember chapter 1? Kuntis Yana chapter 1?
All the other, what Muslims said, what people think Chassidus is?
No, not what people think it is. 4 different definitions to Chassidus from different sources within Chassidus itself. Is that what other people think? 4 different definitions of Chassidus, all true, all go to the essence of Chassidus, that are very, very different. And what happens is the Rebbe starts off the Inyana Shel Teres HaChassidus with a question. If you create an idea, you create a movement, if you created a new initiative in any source, right? If somebody asks you why, you could say why. And it can have one reason. When you do something big and important, there's a reason, only one. You can't have 4 reasons why you did something. And if you have 4 reasons why you did something, one is the most important, and the other ones are they're riding on, they're secondary. The Rebbe starts off the kuntris in Yana Shel Teres HaChassidus by saying that there are 4 different priorities of 4 different explanations for why Chassidus was created, and the Rebbe insists that each of those 4 is equal to the other 3. There's no ikin and tafel. There are 4 definitions for Chassidus, and each of those 4 are exactly the same. And the Rebbe's question is, how can one movement have 4 ikrim? And then the Rebbe explains it by going to this big, huge arichas about what Yechida means, and so on and so forth. Okay? Communicating by writing to each other is equal to talking to one another, especially if I can see. So the Rebbe writes in the Chassidus has 4 ikrim. Does anybody know them? What are the 4 most important things about Chassidus? Number 1. Anybody? Number 1. To wake up a Yid who's faint. To wake up a Yid from his alphas. This is our business. This is what we know. This is what we relate to. When I ask a Lubavitcher, what's Chassidus? Shlichus. Find a Yid who's sleeping, who's not sleeping. He's faint, which is even worse than sleeping. And you wake up his Neshama. This is Chassidus. Yeah? Number 2. Chassidus is a movement, girls, that is about being extra frum. Chassid, Serfam, Lefnim, Yeshudas Adid. The second reason the Baal Shem Tov brought Chassidus into the world, that Yidden should know it's not enough to keep the Shulchan Aruch. You have to do it Lefnim, Yeshudas Adid, beyond the letter of the law. Number 3, to be Mevada your midas, to refine your character, right? The fancy words of it, don't know what they mean. L'shanis mideisav ativim, l'shanis teva mideisav, whatever. But putting the whatever aside, that means a person has mevada his midas. And number 4, amen do verstehen Gettlichkeit, that the human brain, including the brain of Nefesh HaBahamis, should understand godliness. So Rebbe starts off the kuntis in Yana Shel Teres HaChassidus by giving us this list. The first item on this list we all relate to, because we live it. Any person that's involved in shlichus, or anybody goes to Miftzayim, knows this idea that you can touch a Yid who is Rahman al completely assimilated, and wake up his neshama on a street corner, just by sharing a few words and doing a mitzvah with them. It's a koyach alaki that the Rebbe put into the Miftzayim. Right? We relate to that. But the Rebbe says there's 4 Ikrim Chassidus. 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. To wake a Yid up who's faint. Number 2, to live a life based on the Fnimi Shuras Adin to be Mahadeh b'mitzvahs. Number 3, to develop Midas Tevis, to refine one's character. And number 4, that the Nefesh HaSichlis and even the Nefesh HaBahamis should be able to understand godliness. And the Rebbe argues that these 4 priorities are shove, they're equal. They're equal, they're exactly the same. Waking up a Yid from a faint and developing your own mind to understand that Sagar Lakis are equally the purpose of Tedes HaChasidus. Now what is the point? Why am I pressing on this nerve? Why am I making this point? What am I trying to say with this? What I'm trying to say with this is as follows. Chassidus speaks to every single Jew in the world. But on the one hand, it says exactly the same thing to everyone. And on the other hand, each one is getting a different message. On the one hand, the message of Chassidus is equal to me and to you and to people who are not Shemitah Mitzvah. And on the other hand, the message is very different. The message that the Rebbe gives them and the message that the Rebbe gives us is quite different. What do they have in common? How is the message the same? How is the message? You come to the biggest chassid, and to the Yid who's the most assimilated, and you're giving him one message. What is that message? Huh? The message is that you're Jewish because inside you there's a piece of Hashem. That's the message. The biggest chassid, the biggest tzaddik, and the biggest nidoch, a Yid who's vervogelt und verworfen und verloren, Rachman al-Islam, weißt du, nidochim, weißt du, what's the pasuk? Oivdim b'yeretz Ashur v'nidachim. There's oivdim and there's nidachim. There's those who are lost, those who have been pushed away. And Chassidus finds those Jews and it touches their neshama. It says you should know inside you there's a fire, a shtikel fire, a fire. And this fire is a chelik elikabimal, mamish, it's a piece of Hashem. And because of this fire, your connection to the Eibishter is not something you need to create, or choose to create, or learn, or to develop. You simply need to reveal it because it's who you are. That same message is said to the biggest tzaddik, the biggest chaz, the biggest ovid. Being a Yid is not based on what you do with your own brain and with your own heart and your own chushim, your own senses. Even though you're supposed to use your mind and heart and senses to serve Hashem, you are Jewish above all else because inside you there's a fire of Yechida and Nefesh. This is a constant. This is a tzad shavet in all Jews. On the other hand, the message is very different. I was thinking about this over the weekend. How the Rebbe does this. When it comes to Yidden and not from, the Rebbe looks for every way you can bring them any drop of Yiddishkeit, even if it's the smallest amount. And the Rebbe cuts many corners, to bring a Yid Yiddishkeit. And on the other hand, the same Rebbe, when it comes to Anash, when it comes to Chassidim, he expects us to be the highest level of Fnimi Shuras Adin, and he gets very frustrated when he finds that we're cutting corners. It's an act that only a Rebbe could do. He speaks to one Yid and he's so open and so accepting and so easy in his expectation, and the same Rebbe to another person or to that same person when it comes to another relationship says, don't make any compromises. Don't make any compromises. Everything has to be lechatchila. That's Chassidus, because Chassidus, on the one hand, it says exactly the same thing to every one of us. A Yid is a Neshama, a Yid is a Yechida. And on the other hand, for one person that Yechida is that you shouldn't go from faint to what's worse than faint. To another Yid that you shouldn't just do mitzvahs, you should do them behidur. A third mitzvah Yid, you say, you're a fine Yid and you're a wonderful Yid and you're very fru, but you have to work on your midas. And to a fourth person you say, your midas tavis taka very nice, but you have to fill your brain with seichel eliki, you have to fill your mind with the understanding of Elokus. So this is the deal. It's exactly the same and it's very, very distinctive. So the Hayrah, what I'm trying to bring out in this particular class, is to talk to this notion that all of us have a Yechida, right? Come to a Chassidish Yid, a Chassidish Bacher, a Chassidish girl, a Chassidish person, and you speak to them about what Chassidus means to them. Not what Chassidus means to the people that are going to be Makarev. What Chassidus means to them. Chassidus means to them also that I also have a Neshama inside of me. And I want you to know that the Alter Rebbe develops this idea in Tanya at length. Alter Rebbe develops this idea in Tanya at length. And we talked about it in the Tanya classes a little bit. The Alter Rebbe talks about Ava B'Seteres, right? Ava B'Seteres, Pintele Yid. Ava B'Seteres, Pintele, the hidden love. What does Ava B'Seteres mean? What does it mean, Ava B'Seteres? What does Ava B'Seteres mean? The way the Alter Rebbe presents it. What does Ava B'Seteres mean? That there's a Yid out there, right? Who's really Rachmana Litzlan, what they like to call in the world, the Rebbe doesn't like the word, Arochik. They're weitet, oivdim and nidochim. They're farloren and zerstoisen. They're lost and they're crushed in Golus. They're assimilated. Right? Yiddishkeit means not much to them. They don't have much of an appreciation for it, or perhaps they have no appreciation for it. That Yid, when he's faced with a moment of Mesiras Nefesh, when he's faced with a moment where somebody is challenging his Jewish identity, and he's secular, he doesn't care about Yiddishkeit in his day-to-day way. But somebody touches the nerve of his Jewish soul, and he dies like Yiddish Hashem. Literally, he gives away his life, l'kadeh shem shemayim barabim, not to come cut off from the Eibishter. This we know. We know about it because we read about it in storybooks. We know about it because we read about it in Sifrei Musa and Chassidus. And we know about it because these stories happen even now. When I teach Tanya, when I teach those Prakim, Perikut Ches, this year I'm not teaching those Prakim, I tell a story. When I started out as a teacher, my first year as a teacher was Tov Shin Nun Aleph, 1990 to 91. And then it was a new story. It was a year old, 2 years old. What was the story? That that after the Israeli army, all the boys and the girls who serve in the Israeli army, they have to unwind. So they leave Eretz Yisrael, and they travel east or they travel west. They travel all the places in the world where there's no Jewish communities. And I don't know exactly what they're looking for, but they spend a while in the Far East. Now, wherever those people go, there's shluchim to ruin their vacation, Baruch Hashem, you understand? They're trying to run away. It says in Yoina, right? One of the most powerful psukim in Tanakh. My Hashem hu bereach. He's trying to run away from the Eibishter, yeah? Wherever they run away to, there's Nebuch HaShliach waiting for them with open arms. And what's funny about it is they're happy to see him. They're running away from the Eibishter, but when they find the Eibishter and he's dressed with a beard or with a sheitel, somehow I like this version. I like this nusach. This same person that's Israel, he would walk across the street if he saw you, but in Bangladesh or in wherever it is, in Myanmar or in Vietnam or Laos or Cambodia, you're happy to see him. So the story, this goes back 30 years. There were no shluchim in the Far East. Maybe there was a shlich in Hong Kong. That's it. The only shlich in those countries was Hong Kong, after. So, 5 Israeli boys went to Indonesia. You know what Indonesia is? Indonesia is a string of islands. It's 1,000 miles across, at least. It's a bunch of islands, many, many, many islands. Big islands and little islands, right? You've heard of there's Sumatra and there's Borneo and there's a few big islands, a lot of small islands, thousands of islands. I think that Indonesia has 90 million people. It's a very, very populous country, and it's Muslim. It's the largest Muslim country in the world. There are more Muslims in Indonesia than any other country. Muslims today, after the establishment of Israel, they don't like us. And these 5 boys, Israelis, went to Indonesia, and they didn't carry around the Israeli flag, look at me, I'm a Jew. They hid it. They wanted to just enjoy themselves. Anyway, someone discovered that they were Jewish, and that they were Israeli, and that they served in the IDF, the Israeli Defense Force. So they right away suspected that they were spies, and they arrested them. All 5 boys were arrested. They put them in jail. And they were going to try them and kill them for the crime of espionage. These kids went on vacation. They had no intention. They didn't even want to make money. They just wanted to enjoy themselves. But they decided that they're spies. They're going to take their lives. When they realized that this achas dosei, that they were going to kill them, so you can die nicely, you can go out with a fight. So they made a big tumult in the prison. They fought with their guards. I don't know how many of their guards they killed, and they escaped. And one of them was killed, let's say. Yeah. Then they were arrested a second time. And they fought with the guards again and escaped a second time, and another one of them was killed. Two or three came back to Israel alive. And one of the survivors was a frum Yid. He was mamish, he was a Chassidish Yid that brought in payas. And he came back with a very, very funny story. These were his friends, right? Friends in the army are are serious friends, because you depend on each other literally to keep you alive. It's a bond. It's a very deep bond. People risk their lives. People jump on grenades for one another. People take their lives. People die so that another soldier should live. It happens every day in the army, in war. So these kids were close. And he comes back and tells the story. One of the group of this 5 who was killed was a shomer hatzeinik. He was a member from a kibbutz. And he was an atheist, like he was religious. His atheism was very frum, a frum atheist. It's a contradiction in terms, but most atheists are very frum. And for 2 years they argued about it. For 2 years. There's no Eibishter, there's no Moshe Rabbeinu, there's no Harsinus, Avraham Avinu, there's no difference between a Jew and a Gentile. There's nothing about a Yid that makes us a distinct nation and a special nation, and whether they have a different revelation. Godesh, we're no different than anybody else. Unfortunately, a lot of people who are not frum have fallen into that ideology, and they made it into an ikir by saying that they're being nice. They're not being, I don't know what the word is, racist or chauvinist or whatever it is. But the fact of the matter is, it's a fact of life. They go over there to Indonesia, and they're arrested, and they escape once, and they escape a second time, and each time they escape, 1 or 2 was killed, and the few survived, come back, and they tell the story that at one point a galach came to see him, a Muslim galach came to see him with an offer that im yit asmalu, I'm probably mispronouncing it, Islam, it aslemu, if they will become Muslims, they'll let them live. There were 4 or 5 boys. Like I said, they were not Chassidish Borchen from Williamsburg. They were modern Israelis. If they were Rahman son accept Islam, they wouldn't kill them. And accepting Islam is not even as bad as accepting Christianity. It's not even Avodah Zarah. It's whatever. In the scheme of things, it's not a big Avodah, especially under those conditions. So this kid, this shomer hatzeinik, this kid who for 2 years argues with his friend that Judaism has no meaning at all, and there's zero difference in a Yid and a Goy, and Matan Torah never happened, and Avraham Avinu never existed, and Hashem never gave Etzal to the Jewish people. All the rest of the truly cold classic lines. This man, this kid, when they're told either you can become a Muslim or they're going to kill you, he says, you can kill me, but I will never become a Muslim. So he's thinking to himself, I argued him for 2 years, I got nowhere. A Muslim with a gun got the truth out of him in 2 seconds flat. Verstehst? Why? Etem eveg the Neshama, he woke up as Paltiel Yid. And that's what Alter Rebbe brings in Tanya. A Yid is an Ava Mitzvah, a Paltiel Yid. And that when a Yid is squeezed about the most important in Yadam of Yiddishkeit, the Paltiel Yid comes out. But what is the Alter Rebbe's point? Why does the Alter Rebbe spend 7 or 8 prakim talking about the Paltiel Yid? What does the Alter Rebbe mean when he brings up the Paltiel Yid? Because the Alter Rebbe wants to say every one of us, me and you, all of us, have access to our Paltiel Yid in our avodah. Meaning, we're not facing questions of Shmad, Rahman al-Islam. We're not facing questions of being a Yid, not being a Goy. We face our tests, which in the scheme of things are smaller and narrower, right? Which is part of the reason we made a hete. It's not so bad. But each one of us in our tests can harness the koyach of the Paltiel Yid. You don't have to be frei to acknowledge that you have a Neshama, and you don't have to be frei to try to reach the Neshama, bring the Neshama forward and be a Yid on that basis. And this is the avodah of Chassidus. You understand? Chassidus is a haskalah. Chassidus is a philosophy. It's a way of life. It's a derech hachaim. It's a Torah. But how is Chassidus practical? How is Chassidus practical to me? How is Chassidus talking to me in my daily life? How? Chassidus is talking to me in my daily life. Chassidus is saying to me, I have a neshama, I have a soul, and I need to reveal that soul. I need to bring that soul forward, and I need to make that soul a priority in my life. You understand? Yeah, you understand. If you're listening, you understand, right? If you're busy passing notes to your friend and whatever you're scribbling over there, you're not listening, so you don't understand. But those of you who are paying attention understand what I'm saying. That a Yid is a neshama. We also have a soul. Because this is what I was telling you. I'm teaching you Tanya, right? I'm teaching you Tanya. And in Tanya class, I'm brainwashing you. And notice I'm saying the same thing again and again, right? I told you this a bunch of times. If the school year ends and you remember one thing from my Tanya class, I consider it a success. That these prakim are teaching us how to live a life of a chassid. What's the life of a chassid? A neshama life. And girls, now, I want to talk about this now. This is what I want to talk about. Chassidim have ikrim, you understand? Chassidim have things that are very important. One of the ikrim by Chassidim is bittul, right? It's bittul. It's a big bad word, bittul. Actually, it's a small bad word, but it's a very uncomfortable word. And as I always tell you, nobody really knows what bittul means. And the word bittul is so abused. There's such a rachmanas on the word bittul because we use it in such unbittul-like ways. Or to say it differently, this also make you nervous, right? What's a more nerve-wracking way of saying bittul? What's a nervous wracking way? Kabbalas Ol, right? How does Kabbalas Ol work? You're in the 9th grade, you're the 10th grade, and your teacher wants you to do something, and you don't want to do it. And the teacher says, you have to listen to me. And you say, why? Kabbalas Ol. Kabbalas Ol. It's true. Kabbalas Ol is true. But girls, if your teacher makes you do something and you don't want to do it and you resent it, there was no Kabbalas Ol. There was Hatalas Ol. Kabbalah means I accept. Hatala means it was imposed on me. Someone forced me. When your parents or your teachers make you do things you don't want to do. Now, if they tell you to do something, and they say to you, I want you to do it with Kabbalas Ol, but I want you to be makabel the oil. Meaning, the teacher says to you, I want you to do this. I know you don't want to do it. I want you to do it anyway. And I want you to do it because you don't have to agree, you don't have to like it, you have to just do it. Because the Eibishter said, because the Rebbe said, because Taylor says, because Yiddishkeit says, Chassidim says. But I want you to accept that you're doing it. I want you to do it with Simcha. That's Kabbalas Ol. But if your teacher forces you, and while you're doing it, you resent it, and you feel like your free will was taken away, and you would never do it if not for the fact that you were being forced, that's not Kabbalas Ol. There's no Kabbalas Ol at all. That's not, you're being forced. Here's a story that I heard from Rabbi Tzvi Grumblat, the Rebbe Shliach to Argentina, the head Shliach when she was a tzaddik Yid. He told me the following story. His predecessor was Rabbi Bittul Baumgarten, Olav Shalom. Rabbi Bittul Baumgarten passed away 45 years ago. Mamish, 45 years ago. Toshin Lamed Ches. Bittul Baumgarten was a very big chassid. There may be his grandchildren in this room. He was really a big chassid, very dedicated, a very big mukusher. And the Rebbe and him, they loved each other. The Rebbe and Rebbe, the Rebbe and Rebbe. A very interesting relationship. He goes back to the times of the Frierdiker Rebbe. He knew the Rebbe. He was the Rebbe's boy in 1944, not 1954. He was the Rebbe's man. He was the Rebbe's person. The last bunch of years of his life, he lived in Argentina. He lived in America. He did all kinds of things. And in Tafshir Chav Gimel, the Rebbe sent to Argentina, and he was the Shliach Argentina for 15 years. Then he passed away. So he had a very hard time, Rabbi Baumgarten. He was a big tzaddik, but he was no fundraiser. He didn't ask people for money. If you're a shliach and you don't ask people for money, you starve. Kipshute. So he tells me, Rabbi Grumblat tells me, that Rabbi Baumgarten told him, as the gehat geld kein fleish, he couldn't afford to buy a piece of meat. He couldn't buy anything fleishiks. He would go into the kosher shop in Argentina, he'd buy the bones. That's all he could afford. He was pashat poor. He was a tzaddik. He was a big chassid and a big shliach. But the mon wasn't raining down from heaven. He had to ask people for money. He just didn't know how to do it. Some of the best shluchim in the world had that problem. If you don't know how to ask people for money, it's very hard to be a shliach. And it bothered him very much. So and his relationship with the Rebbe was like a father and a son. He was in that category. He really was like a child. He was incredibly close to the Rebbe. And he was so open. He's one of those Chassidim who wrote the Rebbe a letter every single day. And if he missed a day, the Rebbe said, where was your letter from yesterday? He wrote the Rebbe every day, for 35 years. Every day, the Rebbe would happen that day. He never had a chance to do an Aveda, because we did within 24 hours of writing a letter, or 24 hours of writing the next one. He was that kind of a man. He had that kind of relationship with the Rebbe. He came back from Argentina, went into Yechida, and in his letter he wrote, I'm starving. I know I can't support myself. And again, you have to understand the relationship. You can't understand the relationship, and of course you can't understand the Rebbe. I don't know this Rebbe, you for sure don't know this Rebbe, but he's in Yechidus with the Rebbe, right? You know how Yechidus was. You walked in, you handed the Rebbe your note, the Rebbe would open the envelope, or read it, he put on his glasses, and the Rebbe used to take your paper and twirl it on the Rebbe used a pencil. He twirled it on the pencil, so he was reading one line at a time. Every once in a while, he'd put the paper down and scribble something on the margin. He'd read through the whole letter. He'd put it down. And the Rebbe, he made all kinds of marks on the margin, which he took with the oil, whatever the Rebbe did with his papers. The Rebbe took his glasses, put them down, and he spoke to you. When the Rebbe spoke to you in Yechidus, he didn't look at you. He also looked down. And he spoke like a Sikha. Yechidus was very formal for a Nash. The Rebbe spoke to you like a Sikha, but you're the only Chassid. That's what it was. The Rebbe didn't look at you. And I think in Das Tachten, because if the Rebbe would look at you, you couldn't look back. You couldn't. The Rebbe's eyes were fire. The Rebbe's eyes were fire. This I know because I experienced it. The Rebbe's eyes were, you couldn't look into the Rebbe's eyes. It wasn't shaykh. He would look down and he would speak. So Rabbi Baumgarten, who was a Rebbe's man, she was really close to the Rebbe, and whatever was bothering, he was bothering him that he couldn't have no money. The Rebbe read his note, took off his glasses, put them down. He was holding a pencil. The Rebbe threw the pencil onto the table. Boom. And he said in English, "No more complaints. Du wirst zurückfahren. Und du wirst zurückfahren bis Simcha und Tuv Levov. Aber nicht, weil ich heiß dir zurückfahren, und weil ich heiß dir zurückfahren bis Simcha und Tuv Levov. Weil du willst zurückfahren bis Simcha und Tuv Levov." You understand Yiddish? He says, no, stop complaining. And Bela Baumgarten's biggest complaint was not that he had no money. He wanted to be next to the Rebbe. He needed the Rebbe every day. He missed the Rebbe terribly. You're going to go back. And you're going to go back by Simcha. But you're not going to go back because I tell you. You're going to go back because you want to. And you're going to go back because you want to by Simcha. Now you please tell me how that's nice and fair and gentle and kind and, what do they call it today? Empathetic. This is what happened in Yechidus, Kinderlach. This is what happened in the Rebbe's room. You're going to go back, and you're going to go back by Simcha, and you're going to go back not because I'm telling, because you want to. That's all the Rebbe told him in Yechidus. The next day, Rabbi Chadakov called him. And Rabbi Chadakov told him that every month they're going to send him money. The Rebbe took care of him, financially. But not in Yechidus. That was the office. In Yechidus, the Rebbe spoke only the Pnimi, you understand what? The Ruchni is. The Rebbe told Rabbi Chadakov, give him enough money to live. If he can't raise money, give him enough money to live. And he sent him every Chodesh Geld, and he should be able to do his work. But that didn't happen in the Yechida. The Rebbe didn't tell him in his room, I'm going to tell Rabbi Chadakov to give you money. In his room he said, you're a chassid, you're a shliach, you're a soldier, you go back and you do what you have to, because you want to. Now understand, Kinderlach, this little story it's a real story. Why is it a real story? Because the Rebbe is not just saying words to manipulate him. I'm going to force you to do what I say. How am I going to force you? You have respect for me and you like me. I'm going to tell you, don't do it for me, do it for you. That's what Kabbalas Ol means, girls. Hashem gave us mitzvahs. Often we want to do them. Often we enjoy doing them. And often we don't. And we do them anyway. Why Kabbalas Ol? Kabbalas Ol means we don't grunt. We don't wish we didn't have to do it. And do it anyway. We accept that because this is what the Eibishter wants, this is what we want. The beginning of the sentence of Kabbalas Ol is the word Kabbalah. Kabbalah means I accept. There's something for me very hard. Some things are easy for me, some things in Yiddishkeit I like, some things I don't like, and I do them anyway. Why do I do it? Because Hashem said. But if I do them and I hate them and I resent them, one thing I can tell you for sure. If you have children and your children see that you're doing mitzvahs and you hate doing those mitzvahs, they're not going to do them. They're just not going to do them. Why should I do it if you don't like to do it? Why doing it? So Kabbalas Ol is a very sensitive issue. Bittul is a sensitive issue. You know why? You know why Bittul is a sensitive issue? Because Bittul and Kabbalas Ol come from the Neshama. Only the Neshama. The Chelik of the Kami Mal Mamish is capable of saying, I don't want to do this. I don't like to do this. This doesn't feel good for me. And I'm going to do it with my own will. My own will. Because Hashem said, this is a neshama property. It's a Yechida zach. It's a Yechida thing. That's what it is. It's Yechida. Just like that person who screams the whole day, there's no God, there's no Torah, there's no Jewish people, there's no Eretz Yisrael, there's nothing. And when a Muslim goy, thousands of miles away from Eretz Yisrael, tells him, either you become a Muslim or I'm going to kill you. He says, kill me, I'm not becoming a Muslim. And his friend says, I don't understand it, but I'm with you for 2 years about this, and you wouldn't budge an inch, and now this Muslim guy threatened to kill you, you become a big Yid. It woke up his neshama. How is that the nusach of a chassid? And the nusach of a chassid, it's this. It's bittul, it's Kabbalas Ol. It's the ability to do what the Eibishter wants us to do, but we don't want to do it. And like the Rebbe told him, umedaf his tongue, you do it with simcha, you do it happily, you do it with joy. It's an interesting. When you girls went to best stuff, you got the brainwashing, right? So there's more brainwashing and less brainwashing. But the least brainwashing, you heard the message of Kabbalas Ol, right? The Friedrich Rebbe says Nesiches, Ayid is a Kabbalas Ol, a Kabbalas Ol is a Yid. They made you say it so many times until you knew it by heart, and you wish you could forget it, but you can't forget it. Yeah, Ayid is a Kabbalas Ol, a Kabbalas Ol. What does that mean? Ayid is a Kabbalas Ol, a Kabbalas Ol is a Yid. What does it mean? It means Kabbalas Ol doesn't make any sense. Kabbalas Ol shouldn't exist. Hatalas Ol makes sense. I can force you to do something. Kabbalas Ol means I am teaching you that you should force yourself to do something that you don't want to do. So if you don't want to do it, why are you doing it? Why are you doing it? Because a Yid is a Kabbalas Ol. A Kabbalas Ol is. That means it's only on the level of Yechida, on the Bittul Yid level, where that's a possibility. On the Bittul Yid level, a Yid is able to do something, and as the Rebbe told Rabbi Baumgarten, and do it b'simcha for one reason and one reason only. Hashem said. So Yechida b'nefesh, right? To go back to the beginning, how did I start this little Farbrengen? With a statement, and the statement is that before Chassidus, the most important thing in Yiddishkeit was Torah mitzvahs. After Chassidus, the most important thing in Yiddishkeit is a Yid. What's a Yid? Yechida b'nefesh. And you don't have to necessarily be far away for this to be relevant to you. You could be a Chassidish Yid, and this is the word. The avoid of Yechida is an avoid for us. Kabbalah tells one example, and there are many examples. Kabbalah, I said before, Bittul, right? Chassidim are always into Bittul. Chassidim are always into Bittul. Bittul evolved. Used to be Bittul means I'm a Vatal myself. Now we have a lot of Avos Yisrael. So Bittul means I'm a Vatal the next guy. I love you so much, I have to make you feel like trash, so you should become a big chassid. What about me? I don't love myself, but I love you. I love you more than I love myself, so I'm a vatal you, and a vatal myself. I told you this maaseh. That there was a Chassidish Rebbe who succeeded his father. And by his father the minig was, gestupt. They pushed. It was a big avoid, the stuppen pushing. When the father passed away, the son took over his place. The son says no pushing. Everybody, including the Bachrim, are going to have a seat. Everyone has a spot. You sit comfortable. Ruyik will send you a kugel on a plate with a knife and a fork. Everything's balbatish. The Stuppenzach, he stopped. So they said to the Rebbe, the son, the Tata, when pushing Stippen with such a big avoider, that I think it was Ger Chassidus. Beim Taten, the Stuppenzach, when a greise Sach, and now you detect with the whole Chassidus, and you can't push, man, was man sagt, Chassid. So the Rebbe, the son, said, beim Taten, am gestippt, hat man sich gedrückt. By my father, when people pushed, they were squeezing themselves. By mich, am gestippt, drückt man jenem. I see, when I look at the pushing, everyone is pushing the other guy. He says, I don't need that, ich darf es nicht. So sit comfortable. Stuppen, bittel. Bittel means I have to be mevatel myself, not you to be mevatel me. Kabbalah says, I have to tell you what to do, you have to find it inside yourself. And the koyach for this comes from the Neshama. The koyach for a person to do what Hashem says, even if they don't want to, and to do it, their simcha comes from the Yechida b'nefesh. So Bittul and Kabbalas Ol are a Chassidish version, are for from people, a version of how you have a connection to Chassidus, to the Pinta, to the Neshama. And as I said to you throughout this year, I've had a very interesting year so far, yeah? To me, and this is just my opinion, but it's the truth because I'm saying, it's only my opinion, but don't you dare argue with me. It's only my opinion, but I really believe it. I'm not saying it lefonim, I'm not saying it for effect, I mamish believe it. The essence of Chassidus in our generation is Ivdu as Hashem b'simcha. To be sameach. And understand what that means, girls. What are the trademarks of a person who is sameach? What are the trademarks of a person who is sameach? There's only one way for a person to be happy. So listen carefully, okay? If you were sleeping for the last, whatever it is, 42 minutes, I got 3 minutes, listen to these 3 minutes, okay? There's only one way for a person to be happy, only one way. To get over himself. If you're busy with yourself, you'll never be happy, never. Even if you have everything in the world, you're always not happy. You're afraid you could lose it, you think you're entitled to more, somebody else insulted you, all kinds of narishkeiten. The only way for a person to be besimcha is to stop thinking about himself. And like I told one of the girls in one of my arguments that I had with them this year, the old Chabad, you thought about yourself, my davening, my learning. And the Rebbe says, do you want to be a chassid? Stop thinking so much about yourself. Be freilich. The famous story, a young boy came from Europe in the early years of the Rebbe's Nesias, and he went into Yechidas with a list of Avedas, as long as the Golas. I did this wrong, I did this wrong, I did this wrong, I did this wrong, I did this wrong. And he came to the Rebbe, asked him, I don't know how we should fix all these Avedas, like how much shekel mensch. And the Rebbe told him he just flew across the Atlantic, and in 1952, flying across the Atlantic took 24 hours, not 5 or 6 hours. He says, so when you fly across the Atlantic, and I'm from the Moroshchede and Yam, take all of this Moroshchede, all of this sadness, and by the way, there's another word for sadness. All of this self-absorption, this being busy with self, throw it into the ocean, and Shav Hashem Tech Simcha. The Rebbe is giving us good advice, practical advice. We just don't like it. I think we even agree with it, we just don't like it. Why? Because you want to be very busy, very important. I get this all the time, and I get this myself also. I'm sitting in a house, and we're talking about tzadis, real tzadis, that real people have. Tzadis, right? Tzadis, real people have. And we're telling you that this guy is amazing. The Eibush gave him this tzadis, the Eibush gave him this tzadis, the Eibush gave him this tzadis, and he's surviving all these tzadis. Now, I was the official Farbrengen, and somebody else gave this other guy a eulogy by surviving all the tzadis, and I didn't like it. Why didn't I like it? Because I'm a nudnik. I didn't like it because I believe, girls, that the very definition of being a chassid is never defining yourself by your tzadis. Not when you don't have them. When you do have them, the definition of a chassid is, it's good. It's good. Our nature to look at other people's lives for sure. Oh, it's a rachmanos on him. And in many cases, to look at our own lives and say, oh, it's a rachmanos on me. This is the Rebbe's whole nekuda from an avodah perspective now. From a personal avodah perspective, the Rebbe says to us, A, don't think about yourself. And B, say it's good. Say it's good. Say it's good. Now why should I say it's good when it's bad? Why should I do it? Because on the level of the Pintel Yid, it's good. And you want to draw that point out, because that point is going to help you deal with these tzaddas. But if you always go back to saying it's terrible, it's miserable, it's rachmanis, it's bad, and getting worse, I believe that the number one way to stop being a Lubavitcher chassid in our generation is to be justifiably negative. Or negative justifiably. You want to be a chassid, then freilich, and you have to be positive. I want you to think about this. I want you to think about it.